Alrighty, good morning. We're gonna work on this motorcycle again, a little bit more troubleshooting. I got my tea. We got our list of things to do. Here's the to-do list for today. Intake manifold parts, those are on order. Coils, we're gonna work on those today. We're also gonna work on the valves, see if we can get the adjustment on those. And we have time to look at the timing and some frayed wires. We're gonna see what we can do. I got a little bit of time today to get that done. And as you can see, the truck is in the garage because it is like -2 degrees outside, and I'm not gonna open the garage door for more space to put that thing out there. It's nice and comfy in the garage. So we're gonna get going with the motorcycle and start doing some troubleshooting. First things first, got the gloves on to protect the hands from the chemicals. We're gonna start getting this thing apart. Alright, here's the part I always hate is disconnecting these lines, getting this fuel tank off. What this is an extra fuel line to provide exterior fuel. I have a fuel tank that sits up here. That's what this is for. It connects to the tank. We'll disconnect that. We disconnected the fuel pump wiring here. We just got the mounting bolt for the tank, as well as a crossover line. That's for the extra fuel tank that connects to the fuel in here. It's got a shut-off valve, so that's what that's for. I took off the deflectors, so it should be ready to just lift right off. Pull the vent line. Okay, now that the tank is off, we can see all the electronics. It's mostly all hidden by the tank. Now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to start looking at all the different wiring to make sure there's nothing that's cut or frayed or torn, to give me an idea that, hey, there's something wrong here that's causing this issue. I don't think it is, because if it was a frayed wire, it would be continuous, not at startup only. But we don't want to leave anything out with our troubleshooting, so I'm going to keep digging through that. Also, it's good maintenance to look for that stuff when you have these difficult things to get off, like the tank. It's a pain in the neck to get it off, so once it's off, you start looking at stuff while you're in there. Ideally, you don't want to disconnect any more wires than you really have to get things out and move them around, because that just causes chances of you breaking a little tab in the wiring connection or creating a loose connection. So I wouldn't want to encourage you to open up wiring box like this and disconnect them just to disconnect them. It's just kind of a bad habit to do that. If you have to do it, go ahead, but try to avoid it. Alrighty, now that the tank is off, I'm looking at all this wiring. And we're looking at this coil right here, and that's where we need to do some testing. I need to get it out to get my hands on it. But while I'm here, you can see there's a little bit of rubbing right here, and that's probably this wire right here, and I don't see anything that's rubbed through. But oh, look at that. I found a disconnected connection right there. And that goes down to the oil temperature, pressure, or oil temperature sensor. I'm not sure which one it is. It's probably oil temperature. We'll double check it. We'll have to look at that diagram and see what it is. So that in itself is one indicator of feeds back to the computer. And I'll show a wiring diagram to show you what that could cause. Oop, here's a little bit of rubbing here. And that's from the tank, so we're gonna have to look at that later. A little bit of rubbing right here, little issues here. So you can see when you have the tank off or have areas off that are hard to get at, you want to look to see if there's anything that's rubbing, just for general maintenance. All right, down in there is the coils right here. There's a coil right here, and it feeds both cylinders, 1 and 2. So you kind of look in this area right in here. I need to get this coil lifted out so I can do some testing on the coil. Now, when you're taking things apart, you need to be very, very careful about thinking about how they go back together before you take them apart. and watch how you do that. All right, so now I got these unbolted. Now I'm gonna spray a little bit of lubricant down in here to get these coil leads that go to the spark plug, get these disconnected. They've probably been on here since the bike was built. They look original. So I'm gonna be very careful about taking them off. That's another thing, is I'm gonna check this wiring as well on these coil leads. All right, now the challenge is I'm trying to get this connector disconnected without breaking it. It's been in there a while. It's a little tight configuration to get it in there. I can't pull it out to get it out because it hits in the frame. So we have to get that disconnected and I'll be able to pull this coil out. All right, one safety tip I forgot to mention and do myself was to disconnect the battery before I start messing with all those electronics. So I'm gonna do that now. That way I'm protecting myself later for electronics. I'm working with high voltage coils there, and if I accidentally touched the two or created a connection, that would have been bad. Shouldn't have had that issue because the ignition's off, but this is a good precaution. Whew, finally got her disconnected. Now, I should be able to pull this coil out, like so. It was connected onto here, so it was a little challenging. All right, spark plug lead for number 2. Spark plug lead for number 1. Okay, now we got the coil out. We're going to test to see if it's accurate and see if it's a valid coil. Now, according to my manual here, it says the primary is going to be 0.5 ohms resistance and the secondary is going to be 1300 ohms. So this is the primary and then this is going to be the secondary. So we're looking at here, I got it set to my ohms on my meter here. We're just going to connect the two across and see what it says. Now it's thinking about it. That says 0.5 ohms. Looks like we're good. Now that's the primary. We're going to check the secondary. All right, we just changed the ohm meter to a different scale to see what we come up with. And it's showing 15 megavolts or ohms. So might be the problem here. This is a climber's manual ignition coil. It says performance test. And what that does is tells you to hook it up and run a spark plug to see how that does. But we're also going to do just a testing, which I just did. So remove the ignition coil as described in the procedure above, which you saw me do. And now we're going to test across terminal A and terminal B for the primary and terminal A and B for the secondary, which A and B for the secondary, A and B for the primary. You go to the figure here for electrical, it tells you back there in the original, it says primary resistance ignition coil is supposed to be 0.5 ohms. Secondary is 1300 ohms. All right, now that you have the coil out of there, you can see it sit right in there. We're also looking at all these different wires. Now there's a few of these wires that just flopping around that have been here for years, like this one here. Might have been an extra wire that I just cut off, or here's another one that I cut off for some accessory that I had for years ago. So while we're in here, we're gonna go through and clean that up and look at all the wiring again. So we're gonna do that right now. Now this is factory wiring and versus this plastic loom right here is what I've created years ago. We got a little rat's nest of wire going on here, but a lot of this stuff is I've added on accessories over the years. Like this one right here is the Garmin power support for this Garmin here, and then there's a few others in here. They're probably for the lights and a few other things. So we'll dig through here and kind of remind myself what they are. I do have a power diagram for that. We'll figure that out. We'll just clip some of these zip ties and get them out of our way to make it nice and neat. And then that way we'll be able to troubleshoot this stuff later. Now you can see all the stuff that's in here. Some of the stuff is factory. This is a loom here is factory. And then you see this white plastic stuff here is stuff that I added on after the fact. All right, let's cut this plastic. This is old electrical tape. What we're gonna do is we're gonna cut this off and see what the wires look like underneath here. And these are both, this is all electrical tape I put on. So I'm mostly after this wire right here. What does it go to? Because it leads to nothing. My guess is it's an old wire that I use for something and I can get rid of it. Never good to have extra wires if you don't have to. It'll go to nothing. So we'll peel this off. Alright, this is not what we're after as far as trying to troubleshoot the bike, but while we're here, we're not going to ignore this, and we're going to try to figure out the best way to clean this up, or maybe dead end these wires and kind of go from there. All sorts of zip ties. You know, zip ties save the world. That and duct tape. Now, then I got all this out, I'm looking at all the stock wiring, and I don't see any fraying or rubbing that causes any concern, which is great. This is what I was looking for and I was a little concerned about, but I'm not finding any of that stuff. Mostly everything's in good shape. All right, we're gonna leave that wiring to a later day. Now we're gonna move on to checking to see how we got timing for this engine. All right, what this is the pulley cover for the front of the engine, so I can get that off and move the engine around to the position I need to do for top dead center. Now, I loosened these earlier so they're not hand tight, so don't worry about that. They were not hand tight. There you go. So there's the front of the engine right here, and here's the main pulley right here. Right here. Okay, what I'm doing now is I'm looking for the top dead center of the engine. So they're all, the cylinders are top dead center, and that way I know I have a timing to adjust. And I'm using a flashlight and I'm trying to use my ratchet to turn the engine over. And there's a mark here that the manual tells you to look at. Now, I think I found it right here. You put it in the center of this hole. Now the key is, Q-tips are your friend, a little bit of alcohol. You don't want to spray anything with lubricant inside there because that's actually attached to the back of the engine, as well as on BMW motorcycles, they have a dry clutch, so there's actually a clutch in there, and you don't want to get any lubricants on that clutch. So you take a little Q-tip in here, it's alcohol, so you know it'll evaporate real quick, and you use that to clean off the mark to make sure that's the correct mark you're looking for. Okay, now we got top dead center. We're going to take off the valve cover. It's going to leak a little bit. That's the nice thing about the epoxy floor, is it's going to drip on there. I'll be able to wipe it up. We'll get this valve cover off. We'll stick the oil, stick it on there to collect the oil, and then from there we'll be able to start adjusting the timing of the valves, or the adjustment of the valves. Now this is the challenging part about having aftermarket stuff on here, is it doesn't line up perfect to get this nut off. So I'll go get a T-handle. Alright, so all these are loose. Let's clean everything out of the way here. We're just going to pull this off. I totally forgot I have to take this off. Alright, we got some of the bolts loosened up. I can pull this away now and get this out of the way. I totally forgot that I had to move that out of there. And that tells you how long it's been since I've actually been in here. So what we're going to do is we're going to adjust these valves and kind of look at some diagrams and to see what the valve adjustment should be for these, and if they're off, I'll adjust them. Typically the BMWs don't change a lot. Kind of set them and then you check them every so often. We're at 67,000 miles. I'll go back and look at my notes to see how long it's been since I checked them last. Obviously it's been a long time since I forgot I had to take this off to do that. Alright, we slide this in here like so, and to see if it's gonna fit. So it's a little tight on both sides. Oh, see, it fits right there. But this one's a little tight, so this needs a little bit of adjustment. So it tells you, the manual, you have to do them both at the same time. Do it at the same time so they're supposed to fit in there correctly. So this one won't fit in there, so I have to back this nut off and adjust this here. Now we do the same thing exactly for the intake side. See if they fit, see if there's a fit. They fit fairly well, actually. There's no adjustment there. That actually holds it correctly. I'm not forcing it in there. There's not a lot of looseness, so it tells me that they're almost exact. So the only one I have to do is adjust this one on this side. Okay, now what we're going to do is we're going to adjust this valve. This one's good, as it goes in and out, slides nice and well. It's got enough friction in there to hold it there, but enough that you can pull it out gently as well. So you want to do the same thing for the top, and we don't quite have that here. So what we're going to do is back this off, back this adjusting nut off, rotate this inner adjuster in or out to find the friction we want on this feeler gauge. Backed off, in or out a little bit. You're just trying to get enough friction there so it's happy. And then you back it back down, tighten it back up. Adjust it, double check it, make sure it's still good. Make sure they both fit the same. There we go. All right, now, this temperature is done cold. On some valves, you need to do it warm. You don't like doing those because they're painful, but that's how you adjust valves. This side's basically a repeat of the other. Now, luckily, this side is a little bit more spacious for the engine guard, so I'm not gonna have to fight it as much. All right, now what we did is you turn the top engine back over for top dead center for this particular cylinder. So it's top dead center for each cylinder. Now I brought it back over top dead center. Now I'm adjusting these to make sure, check them, see how they're good, how good they are. So kind of like the other side, the top one's still a little tight, the bottom one's fine. See how these are. These seem to be okay here. Well, that's a little loose on that side. So we're going to do some adjustments over here. Now the way to describe this is you just tighten it just enough so there's friction on this feeler gauge and it stays there. Not enough that you can slide it in and out, but not so much that you have to pull hard. And it's supposed to be on both feeler, so both of them. So all done. Another thing we're going to do is check to make sure everything's timing is correct. So if you look in there, there's a little arrow on that, and that's what that is that's from the cam, and that's the chain and the cam. And that arrow is supposed to be pointing in that direction flat. Now the other one looks the same, I just checked it. So by the fact that those are pointing out there, we know that this chain hasn't jumped off the teeth or anything like that, and there's no issues. So we know the timing is good. So we know the hard starting is not because of valve train issue. All right, on our list here, we checked the coils. We might have a bad secondary. We checked the valve adjustment. We did that, minor adjustment, so that wouldn't cause any issues. Timing, we've got two more tests to double check that. We didn't find any frayed wires, but we did find that loose connection to, and what I remember on my last trip with First Sergeant is that I had my oil temperature gauge bouncing around, and that would explain why it was bouncing around, because it was not connected. So now what we've got left to do is check on the fuel injectors. We're gonna check the fuel pump and make sure it's got the right output and pressure. We're just waiting on parts for the intake manifold, so we'll go from there. So right now, everything's checking out. There's a few more things we gotta check, and we'll go from there. But as you can see, there's a logical step to all this. We don't start throwing parts at it. I would have probably not guessed the coils were bad, but Could be. So we'll look at that. We might look at some aftermarket, more high performance coils to stick in there. In addition to high performance coils, we might also put some brand new leads to the coil to the spark plug as well. That's the other thing I did put on the list is we need to check the spark plug gapping to make sure to see how that is as well. That would affect the performance as well. That's gonna wrap it up for today. I got a little bit of homework to do. I got some parts to order. We'll get back to you on part 3. Hopefully we'll start wrapping this up and try to figure out what it is. Start putting it back together. Probably end up going to be part 4 parts to this because I want to wait on some more parts and put it back together and go from there. But we're starting to narrow it down. It looks like the primary suspect might be the coil. We'll go from there. If you like what you see, hit the like button. Please smash that subscribe button. I need the subscribers, as well as hit the notification. Additionally, don't forget to check me out on Instagram. I'm out there as well. You'll get to see the notice the next time things are coming out. I'll get previews of that going out on Instagram. So check that out on my Instagram as well. All right, thanks for following along on this BMW adventure, trying to figure out what's going on with my bike. We'll talk to you guys later.